It's about to go down with Marc and Cathey, a live coaching show about dropping ideas. Marc and Cathey coach and have conversations with brilliant idea creators who are reimagining the world through the expression of their words, thoughts, and action.
Oh, hey, everybody. I'm Cathey Armias, and it is about to go down today.
Oh, it's about to go down like you never understood before. Hey, I'm Mark Williams, and we are here with our friend, our guest, Cinthia Manuel. Hold on. You got to understand that Cinthia Manuel is a first-generation Latina. She is a proud daughter of immigrant parents. She's hold on, I got to make sure I get this right. She's a Latina-preneur. A Latina-preneur. I love the way I gotta say it again. She's a Latina-preneur. But she is also a TEDx Talk speaker who has delivered a talk that we've got to talk about today because we want to talk about what that talk was about, what she's done since the talk, and we also want to find out how we can take this idea to that next level. So her idea that she has come to talk to us about today is how the mentees need to take ownership of the mentor relationship, right? So we're talking about mentees, we're talking about mentors, we're talking about how mentees can take ownership of the mentor relationship. So Cinthia, thank you so much for being here with us. And tell us, you just got to kick it off the bat, right? Tell us a little bit more about this idea and what you have done with this idea since you delivered that talk.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that fire intro. I love it. I'm like all excited. I couldn't wait to get on your amazing show. And I am, so excited to see my idea explode and go to the next level. So let me tell you a little bit about what my idea, expand on the idea that you introduced here, Mark. And let's take it from there. So I did my TEDx talk on why is mentoring backwards, which really goes back to, to what Mark said. It's like really taking a look at the mentee and the mentor relationship. And so what does that mean? For, like when we think about a mentoring relationship, typically you have two people, right? You have the mentor and then you have the mentee. The mentor, most likely, in their lifetime, they get some type of training, some support, some access. And then the mentee, though, doesn't get that exposure because I feel like we have been conditioned to, as mentees, to let the mentor kind of manage and lead the mentoring relationship. And with that, yet we are expected as mentees to act like a mentee. Well, what does that mean, right? Like we follow the lead of the mentor. We see their, the knowledge, the access, the power, the tools that they bring. And that is amazing. I'm not saying that that's bad. All I'm saying is that we as a society haven't done enough work to really equip the mentee to own the mentoring relationship. Mentoring relationships often kind of focus more on, kind of like problem solving. So here comes the mentor, gets matched with the mentee, there's something that is missing, and then together they go and work on this. And that's great, that's awesome. But it typically is more, it falls more into the mentor to really kind of lead that phase and really ask the questions, provide the support. And it might take a long time sometimes to even figure out what does the mentee need. When I look and look at the narrative, I want to flip the narrative. I want to flip the script and say, how can we equip the mentee with tools, resources, access, and support so they can actually own their story? Because when they're coming to the mentoring relationship, a lot of the times I feel that the mentee is seen as they're missing something. There's a deficit. That's why they're seeking for that support. When in reality, they're coming with so much richness. Like the skills that they have gained through the lived experiences are massive. Yet we don't see that. We don't come to the table to say like, hey, mentor, here is the greatness that I bring to the table. Here's what I need you to provide me the access to, the support, the resources, or the tools, so then I can take my professional path to the next level. I can, my educational path to the next level, or whichever it is. We don't do that. And so we leave that greatness. That greatness doesn't even make it to the table. And so for me, it was important to have the mentee to own their stories, to own, what their value, their worth, to really see themselves as saying, I'm looking for a partnership. I'm looking for this relationship, so then we can come, together, we can be a much more powerful force. That's what my idea is kind of falling into. And because again, we don't resource the mentees enough. And so you asked me what I've done. So this is kind of a little bit of what I show in my TEDx. Yeah. So a little of what I did in my talk. And so ever since then, I started talking to people and asking them, hey, what do you think of this idea? And then people often tell me, hey, Cinthia, I feel like after talking to you, I feel like I've been blinded or blindfolded when I go into my mentoring relationship, because you're right. I cannot rely so heavily on the mentor to carry this relationship on our behalf, because that's what I've been conditioned to do and to act. And so what I started doing, I was like, all right, let's unpack this together, because the biggest fear for the mentee is, how do I take ownership of this relationship? I don't even know what I want. I can't even decide what I'm going to have for breakfast, let alone you want me to go find this mentor and tell him this is what I need. And so what I started doing is, I actually did a webinar last year where I really kind of took it back and said, well, let's start from the beginning. Let's own your story. What do you bring to the table? What are those incredible experiences? What are the resources? What are the skills? I mean, I want people to see their beauty and their power, so that they can be like extremely confident with themselves and say, here's what I need, again, to go to the next stage. Right? And I'm not saying that, again, you don't need the mentor at all, because the mentor is so key in this process, but let's put our resources and efforts into the mentees so that they can actually grow in this process as well. And they don't feel like they have to let somebody else do the work for them. So that's kind of what I'm sitting at. And I need help.
Well,
I had to tell the story.
Wow.
Well, right. Because like when Cinthia did this talk, you have this concept and you think something works a certain way and it just kind of is, and you leave it alone. And then somebody comes along and goes, it's backwards. And then gives you like a formula and you go, oh, wait a minute, that is very backwards. So, with Cinthia, one of the things I loved when you gave the TED talk was, Cinthia worked really hard. I mean, here's a great example, by the way, to anybody listening. Here's a great example of somebody that's been, she went through the whole process herself. I mean, you can hear it in her TED talk, the story of her mentorship journey, being a mentee herself, and then flipping it the other way. And then now, coaching and teaching on this. But when Cinthia came into it, she already had a really good idea. It was already there in her head and she could articulate it really well, but to really make it like hit people, I think it was just so smart to tell everybody that it's backwards. Or, she said, what was your line? It was like, it's not like the way that we think about it is broken. She goes, well, it's not broken, it's backwards, I
like that line.
Yeah.
It's so good. And so now here, Cinthia, if we're kind of like, if anybody wants to go back and watch your TED talk, they should, it's amazing. But kind of taking it from this 2.0 spot is where you lead off with, I love this space a little bit more of the mentee, right? Coming to the table, knowing what your story is and part of your experience, not feeling, like you have a deficit in anything, but understanding that you have power. Maybe even owning, I've heard you say this before, Cinthia, maybe even owning a little bit if a mentor is not the right person for you. Yes. Because somebody just put you two together looking at one piece of criteria. So even knowing the criteria that you might need. I think one challenge you have, which is also a really great thing, is you came out of the gate with such a good idea that you have to match that now. Like you have to match that level of like, but you know what I mean, Marc, right? the way that she made us rethink something, I think should be a part of the way she always expresses this. Like that should almost be a formula for the way she talks about things, because she already challenged us to think differently in this space.
You mean in terms of being as I like to call it, a myth buster?
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Saying, like, you thought, but
you
let
thought.
me tell you.
Yeah, you thought you knew everything you knew. You might have even been a mentor for 20 years. Did you know that you were doing it wrong? And then you're like, yeah, backwards. So backwards. Now, by the way, Cynthia, I always show up at my, when I mentor a few people, I always show up and I'm like, okay, so what are we doing? What do you need? You know, it's a little bit more like them focused as opposed to me. Always, because you definitely did break the way that I think about it. So yeah, that's what I'm talking about, Marc. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, here's a question that came to my mind as I was thinking about it. And I love the idea. And I also love the idea of breaking the myth, right? I'm wondering, for those out there who don't see themselves in a traditional mentor-mentee relationship, right? Because there's millions of people out there who don't see themselves, or who are not in that type of relationship, but could benefit from what you are saying, right? How do we reach those people? That's what I'm curious about.
Ooh, that's a Marc. Ooh, I love your fire. You're bringing it today already. Like you're hitting it. You're like right out of the gate. I'm gonna hit it with fire. I like that. That's a great question.
It's a really great question. And I mean, what is coming to me quickly, right, without really putting some time.
Exactly. You're like one tutor right there.
I was like, I am on fire here. Like literally on fire, no, like on fire. But anyways, what is coming to me is, again, really helping people understand that when you're seeking for advice, for support, it shouldn't, again, like it should be, how do we arm that individual that is seeking for that support, for that access, for the tools and resources, whether you are officially called a mentee or an advisor, right? I mean, I think about, when I went to high school and college, no one told me or gave me a class on how to be a mentee. Like no one, they said, hey, Cynthia, here's, we're going to help you get a degree. We're going to help you get a diploma. And hopefully you on your own can figure this out. Right? And then we're expected to be successful based on what we know and the access or no access that we have, right? And the tools and resources. And again, when I think about whether you're asking for advice, whether you're asking for coffee, for somebody to have an informational interview, we should equip you, we should train you to actually know what to help you figure out what you need to ask for. And it goes back to what you were saying early, Cathey, because in my talk that I did mention that there is times where we need to be actually coming to the mentors or advisors or people who we are seeking support from and saying, hey, here is what, here's my goal. Here's what I need. Can you help me? So that's a whole different conversation than me coming to you and saying, hey, I want to reach this goal. I don't know where to get started. Can we have a conversation? Right? That takes a whole different flip. And then again, that to me is going back to that owning that relationship, like owning that, giving the mentee or the person the power to do the research, to give them the resources so that they can get to that point. Right? And they're not going to do it alone. I mean, it might take different types of mentors. And this is one of the other things that we don't typically think of is like, I might need a mentor to help me in my technical skills. I might need a mentor to help me with life advice, right? Yeah. Like there are different types of mentors and sometimes, or people that we're seeking support from, but sometimes we're just like, oh, this person, I got along with them so well. I adore them. We have this great relationship. Maybe they can help me with what I need too, right? Like if it's something else not related to a relationship. And so again, it's even understanding those parameters that some people say, hey, I have 3 different types of mentors. Great. They're touching on 3 different things that you need, right? Yeah. So how do we
having the wrong mentor, Cynthia, is like asking my mom for computer advice or IT advice, right?
Like, well, we're supposed to do that,
right?
I mean, you might get there, but it might take a while.
I don't know. You might not never get there, and you better be ready for that.
Yeah.
No, but I like when you were saying that, I was thinking of the analogy though of asking, or it's like, I've used this analogy before. It's like shopping for a prom dress in the grocery store. You know what you want, but you're at the wrong place, Yeah.
I like that.
This is going to be my day, y'all. I'm just going to be dropping the dumb analogies, the quirky, cheesy analogies or whatever. No, but Cynthia, I think it's I think one of the things that I picked up from what you were saying too, and I wrote this down. Marc and I were always writing. I wrote this down. I wrote because of what Marc said and what you said together. I kind of blended it, and I wrote also a mentee equals like a learner, right? And maybe mentee can equal a lot of different words. Mentee equals learner, mentee equals, taking initiative or initiator, maybe give, if you were to stick with the one word kind of title. And maybe that's another way that you can really build this out. Because I also think that a mentee, in my mind too, because I was just thinking about all my experiences, mentees need to be open to the whole realm, because you can come also 100% with, I want to do this, and these are the things I need. But also the mentor they don't even have to be older than you. They might have different experience or know different people. They might go, oh, they might be able to still open your eyes to something that you didn't know, but you'll never get there, or it'll take a really long time to get there if you don't come with initiative. So just maybe defining out a little bit, like mentee should equal the learner, should equal, but also the initiator, but also, the experienced, story rich, person. You're coming to the table with so many things. And I actually think, Cynthia, because you've done such a good job with already painting this picture in our mind, which makes it really vivid, I think you should work really hard in creating models for the mentee that make us really quickly, analogies or models or something that will make us think really quickly about how we need to act, as opposed to maybe telling, these analogies they just always work well. I don't know if you're thinking about any, Marc, but my one was making them think about all the different titles they come to the table with.
Yes, I was thinking about that. And it's funny you should say that, because as a teacher, as soon as you started talking about what the mentee should be thinking about in terms of not what their deficit is, but what their needs are, I immediately went into the classroom and thought, what if students thought that a whole lot more? Like, what do I need to get out of this student-teacher relationship so that I can achieve my particular goals, right? Like, even in the classroom, it's really, I teach, you listen, and you show me that you've learned, right? Almighty great one of knowledge, right?
I quiz you and then we find out.
But so I love that idea, and I love the idea of a mentee equals a learner, so forth and so on. I go back to whether or not everybody sees themselves as a mentee, and how important is that for everyone to see themselves as a mentee?
Yeah.
Because I think we all have
so good
from somebody, right? So how do we see ourselves as a mentee? And then what makes us, I don't know if I want to put this word good or bad on it, right? But what makes you ready? What makes you use the word armed, right? I think you said when you seek advice, how do you arm yourself, right? So what makes you ready to be a mentee, right? But I would love to know, like, for everybody out there, again, we think about mentors and mentees as students, or I'm an apprentice, or I'm working for a company. But there's a lot of people who don't see themselves as mentees, even though they are. So how do we define that? How do we define the mentee in all of us?
Oh my gosh, Marc, you're blowing my mind. because I wrote down, what are you a mentee of? Because Cynthia, I think everybody, and this might be a really cool exercise you could do, because I know you do training too, but you could show somebody in their entire life, you could go mentee and expert, and then maybe middle of the road, come up with a word for middle of the road. There's 100 things that every single person's an expert at, and there's 100,000 things that we're all mentees of, and then there's a lot of stuff that we're in between. So even if you're young, doesn't matter. I think sometimes people think because you're young, you're not young in everything. You know, you know what I mean? Like you could meet a 15-year-old kid that's always like on the street, and I always see him on his skateboard and he's constantly falling. And every time I see him, I'm like, that is so amazing. He's only falling because he's trying new things. But he's probably an expert skateboarder. If he wanted to go show the moves he does know, he's probably really good. So maybe you could run through and ask people, like, what are you actually a mentee of? And what are you an expert in or of?
Ooh,
Right?
you know what you just
kind of gives you a spectrum.
Yes. I'm sorry. You know what you just remind me of? I remember working with a mentee. Look, I was a mentor working with right? and one of the things that really stood out to me is this young person was struggling a lot, right? And we would sit in my office, and one day he asked me if I knew how to play this card game, this role-playing card game. I can't even remember the name of it right now, but it was like one of these medieval things.
Dungeons and Dragons or something.
It was something newer, right? But along the same lines. Yeah. Dice, cards, and all kinds of things. I had no idea what we were doing. I had no idea why we were playing this, but I suddenly realized that he was an expert at that, right? Yeah. And there was a level of joy that he got out of playing this game and teaching me. I'm telling you, he would teach me how to play this game. I was like, I don't know. You got to read the card for me, right? But what I noticed is that it became an entry point because that was his area of expertise. Yeah. That became a way for us to bond. And without that area of expertise, not the deficit, you used that word earlier, Cathey. Yeah. Not the deficit, but the greatness that he brought to the relationship actually became the entry point for us to achieve so many other things. And it was funny because someone once said, why are you wasting your time playing this game with this kid? And they didn't realize he was bringing something to this mentor relationship that allowed the mentor relationship to really explode.
Yeah, so what's coming up for me is two things. The first one is like this power shift. Where you are in a mentor relationship, you have your mentor, mentor mentee, or advisee and advisor, whichever you want to call it. And typically, again, it's like we've been conditioned to see the mentor as this person who's going to help us solve our problems, who's holding this knowledge and guidance, to support us in our goals. But what that example that you just described right there, Marc, to me, it showed that you said, hey, if you're good at something that you want to share with me, and something that might be personal, right? Because there might be a story behind it as to why they love playing that game. And so not only is that building relationship, but that's also saying, let me show you how to, let me just show you this, Marc. And the fact that you were like, let's do this, right? Even if you're just never going to play in your life, the fact that you opened that door, right? For that ownership to be shifted, for that power to be shifted, is actually empowering the mentees to say, I do bring something to the table as well. Right? And then the other piece to me that really comes up a lot is when we think about, and I don't know if it's in the United States or not, but this has been my experience, is very oftentimes when we engage in a mentor-mentee relationship, advisor-advisee relationship, is that typically the advisors or the mentors don't tend to be very open about their story. Right? So how do we find that connection? Because when I'm looking for a mentor now, because I'm flipping the narrative, I'm like, we're going to fix this thing. So I'm taking the lead as a mentee. I go and I'm like, I've been talking to people about like, let's tell our story, not from a deficit point of view, but from the richness side of it. Because I want my mentor to know and see me as I want them to see me. right? To respect what I bring into this relationship. And so, but in order for me to connect, I also have to make sure that the mentor is willing to open up. And, because it's not a transaction. A mentor relationship should not be a transaction, should be a relationship, should be, I don't know. To me, it's like in order for me to feel like I'm moving forward, to be, to really trust this individual also has to let me into their heart in some ways, right? So, and I feel like that is also missing from mentoring relationships. That's something I haven't explored yet, but that is missing too. Especially when I think about the workplace. I mean, how many people really open up and, when they're like, hey, I assign you a mentor, you're like, great, let's figure this out. And sometimes I feel like we get stuck in these relationships. And again, how do we shift the power? How do we tell their story? How do we have people tell their story? And how do we find a pathway to really kind of help the mentee get what they really need? So, but that's really what came up for me as you were saying. I was like, that's right.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. I see. I love where these conversations go, because somebody has this great idea, Marc, and then we geek out and we're like, and then all of a sudden everybody's excited, and and then you leave, Cinthia, with so many things. Your head is hurting, and you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do with all this, but I'm going to do something. One of the things that I just can't get away from now because of the conversation that's come up. This is how I'm going to act as a human being moving forward. I'm always going to ask myself in any relationship, the mentor relationships, the mentor-mentee relationships I'm in right now, I'm going to go back and be like, to them and to me, I'm going to say, what am I, what am I a mentee of? What am I in need of being mentored in, even in this relationship? And then what am I an expert in? What could I help? Like, how could I, and how can we share this? And how can I be open? I like that, Cinthia. I love that, because I do think sometimes when people think the spotlight's on them, like as far as like their one skill, you're a mentor because you're at work, you kind of get puffed up a little bit. Like if you were a bird, the feathers would be ruffling a little bit in your puffy chest, and then you just think, I just need to talk about the thing that I'm supposed to be an expert in. And I don't want to talk about things that make me human or make me vulnerable or that would make me really connect to you as a person. I don't want to do that because I'm an expert and I need to look flawless and I need to look perfect and I need to maintain. It kind of relieves the pressure from our side too, like being a mentor, right, Marc? Your story has always that story's blown my mind. And like, I heard it again and I was like, oh, I love that story, because you just put so much love and care and attention with your student, and y'all were playing games constantly. And you said you like never really figured it out, right? But like, or somewhat figured it out. I don't know.
Never figured out. I remember the game was called Magic the Gathering.
Oh, Magic the Gathering. I remember you telling me about it. I still named it. I don't know what that is.
But I keep hearing this word, and I wrote this word down, exchange, because I also think about, to piggyback off of what Cathey was saying, a lot of times as a mentor, or advisor, a counselor, there's a lot of belief that I should not be exchanging, right? That this is not about me, this is about the other person. So again, let me impart knowledge, let them receive it from my great wisdom, right? And let me not get personal about this because it's not about me. But what you just said, Cinthia, flipped it. If we're talking about flipping things, right? It's about taking that norm and saying, no, that's not the way to do it. Let's turn this into an exchange. And Cathey, I love how you said it. As a mentor, I maybe should be asking myself, what do I need help with that I can get from my mentee?
Yeah.
That's really powerful. That really, you talked about the power shift. I'm thinking about the paradigm shift of a mentor-mentee relationship, that both are looking for something to gain from it.
And I have a name for it because I'm a martyr. Here I am. I'm going to sit around and y'all are talking and I'm like, all right, I have a name for it. Why don't you call it you could mess around with the verbiage of the tenses, but why don't you call it like the mentor exchange?
Ooh.
Because that tells you so much right there, that it tells you, it already is telling you that there's an exchange. It kind of already tells you it's going to, you know, two ways or whatever. You could call it the mentee exchange, but I think mentor actually is better in this particular case, Cinthia, because I think we're trying to like challenge what we think, and just hearing mentorship, we think we know what that means. But now when you add the word exchange to it, it goes, well, wait, what? Like, okay, as a mentor, I'm like, what's being exchanged, you know? I don't know. What do you all think?
It's like bringing the loop back.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah. And it's true. I was just thinking about how like I complicate things all the time. And I love that this is like so straightforward, like with mentor exchange, because it's like right on the name.
Yeah, it's right there. You know, you kind of know. If you were to ask 100 people, probably 98 of them will get it right.
You're like, what do you want to change? Well,
yeah. By the way, Cinthia, because I saw Marc make a face at you, you don't complicate things. You look for depth. And you know what? That's what's made your TED Talk so beautiful, is that you were so, oh, Marc, Cinthia like coming in my office with boards, like, you know, she's walking in like, these are the ideas and everything. Like Cinthia really, and you know, that's what I love. And her passion just like oozes out of her body. Like in every way, shape, or form, there's just passion coming out of her thoughts, just going deep. Like, no, I'm not just going to come into this, go, okay, we're doing a mentor relationship. It's like, she took it to so much level, even when she was the mentee. So Cinthia, it's your superpower to like challenge it. Think deeper, go deeper. Like you have a good level, you have a good idea on the level surface, but what are like the 100 levels below? That's where Cinthia lives, you know?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, and I think about, you know, and this is something that like you, Cathey, and I talked about before when I was even working on my talk, is I went back all the way to even saying, well, what is mentoring, you know, what is the translation of mentoring in Spanish?
Yeah.
Oh.
There's no such word.
There's no word. I know.
There's no word for mentoring in Spanish or many different languages. And
really?
So, yes. And so even I was like, well, at first I was like, well, no wonder I had to translate it into Spanish, right? So then I was like, and I literally was thinking like, this is why also like my whole trajectory of mentoring relationships, you know, until like the point where I was like the aha moment, I was letting people drive my relationship. I was letting people tell me, this is what you need to be successful. And it came from a really good place, right? It came from people well-intended that said, we want to help Cinthia. This is what we see in you, Cinthia. And I cannot let myself be part of that process. And, you know, I think about my parents, and my parents, you know, they give me advice, absolutely. But there's nobody that I can be like, oh, I'm going to have a mentor when I'm in high school, or like that doesn't exist in Mexico. And, you know, even living in the United States, that is, you know, like I think I was calling people, and I call them the word mentoring, mentoría. I mean, it's totally made up word, and I major in Spanish, so that wasn't even I just made up that word. So, you know, and I was just like, oh my God, like I may not tell people about this. But, you know, even then, just understanding the cultural aspects of things too, and that relationship building, and what is the foundation of mentoring. Because when I think about the foundation of mentoring, and what is the ultimate goal? What does success look like in a mentoring relationship? And to me, that looks so different from so many different people and perspectives. But where do I find the guidance? Who can give me that support? Right? I think it's when I think about like when you were talking about Cathey, like how can I keep deeper, right? And if I keep unfolding things, is how do I even get started, right? And as a mentor, what kind of questions should I be asking when I'm getting training? And if I'm not getting training, what kind of support should I be really asking for, and not just assuming that what the organization or the local foundation is telling me that this is what training should look like, or my relationship should look like. I should, I can challenge it. Like, how can we also equip the mentors so we can start flipping the narrative and doing that exchange? Because, like you mentioned, Marc, it's a norm. I mean, this is how, when we think about mentoring relationships, this is how a mentoring relationship looks like, right? Because this is the mold we follow.
Yes, but I want to add something to this. And it's interesting that you said the norm, because as I was listening to you speak, it occurred to me that a lot of young people are put into mentor-mentee relationships, right? Like I think about in schools, right? Schools will try to find mentors for their students. It's not like the students are saying, hey, principal, hey, teacher, can you find me a mentor? Like, no, I don't know any kid who's ever done that, right?
Right.
And I will tell you that a lot of, and again, I'm speaking from the perspective of being and working with schools, it's actually often very difficult to find mentors.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if it's because there's so much pressure on, well, what am I mentoring about? I don't know how to do this. Do I really want to try to mold some young kid into the next me? And again, because it's like, oh, am I really the old wise man, the old wise owl, the old wise woman? Am I really all of that? And the norm actually is that it's very difficult sometimes to find mentors. And I wonder if the concept of the mentorship exchange takes some of that pressure off, so that as somebody who might be asked to be a mentor, I'm getting something out of this, right? Because a lot of mentors, I think, always look at it as, I'm giving up my time, I'm investing this, I'm investing that. But do I really have enough time for this? And why do they think that? Because I'm the one giving, I'm not the one receiving. And so I wonder if this concept of the mentorship exchange could actually attract more mentors for all of us mentees out there.
Yeah, no, you're so right. Because it's true. Like, it's really hard to get people to mentor, and I think a lot of times it's because they're walking into the unknown, or there's this idea or perception that is heavy weight to carry in that relationship as well, right? So absolutely, yeah. I know, and I it's like really sticky in like the mentor exchange.
Yeah. I
always call Cathey the concept queen. So she just
I love
it. She drops it.
I'm really gonna work on this.
I just really, when I hear stuff, sometimes my brain just tries to process into something that I think that, as human beings, like, how sometimes like somebody just showed a really good picture the other day in a training that I loved. And it was two people talking, and out of the mouth of one person was supposed to be like the words or what they were communicating, right? And it was coming out a straight line, and it was in their head, and it was perfect. And then when it was going into the ears of the other person, it was like, and so it's like, I think sometimes we have all the, like, we're really close to our ideas, like we're this close to our ideas. And so we fully understand them and understand the value of them, but we have to give people away. And I think this is really part of sharing a good idea, is taking the time, not to keep working on how good the idea is. The idea is awesome. Taking the time to be able to let people digest it in a way that, like, boom, you hear something, you immediately know what it means. So, and that was, and then sometimes it's a mystery, right? Because her other talk, her TED talk with the title of, the way that we view mentoring is backwards, is like, that's a challenge to your thinking. So you don't know exactly what she's going to say yet. And then sometimes there's a concept where you're like, okay, I get it. It's an exchange. Tell me more. I know. Like, what does that mean? Yeah.
You know what it means? It means not stepping into the relationship as the person who should have all the answers, but as the person who's also bringing the questions.
Ooh. I like the way that you said that. Yeah, right, like write that down, Cynthia. See, now I think this is the first time we've got somebody else writing something down, Mark. Look at this. I'm going to give you a high five on that one.
Keep it coming.
We're usually the ones, Cynthia, writing, but here you are. Like, no.
My little unicorn pen,
I love it.
Make it fun. But no, I love that. I love that because, again, to me, it's saying like, you're learning from each other. There's initiative from both ends. And there's not this expectation, right, from one party to know it all or to have figured it out all. And it also puts, I feel like it also puts responsibility and accountability on the mentee to be like, absolutely, people out there want to help, but we need to provide them some guidance on what kind of support do you need, right? What resources will help you get to the next level or, help you achieve your goal that you're seeking to achieve. Because again, to me, it's like, we've gone through, like our education, and I really wish we had a class where it's like, here's how you find mentors. Here's how you do informational interviews. I mean, I actually interview my potential mentors before I even asked them to be my mentors.
Wow.
Because I wanted to find that connection. That connection to me was so important. So when I looked at my values, and, this is why I go back to learning more about myself. One of my values is family. Very strong values. And so I really wanted to find a person, not that could become like my, that I was like, oh, my brother and sister, but someone that I can trust to that level, someone that I can actually feel that there was this connection of being genuine, being, caring, really, really understanding who I am as an individual. So for me, right, like I went in and I was like, hey, and I did it by telling people, I just want to sit down for an informational interview. And I wanted to learn about, what they did. But mostly I focus on their journey, on their personal journey, what they did to overcome challenges, but also how do they celebrate successes and what were some of the things that they were working on still. Because I felt at that time when I was interviewing people, I mean, they didn't know I was interviewing them, but... So
just gonna ask a couple questions. She pulls out a book.
And I mean, I literally will flat out ask them afterwards, hey, I'm looking for a mentor and this is what I need. Would you be willing to be my mentor? Right? So there was an exchange of something personal in my life, their life. And then typically, when I ask, most of the time they were like, absolutely, yes, let's do it. But again, there was some connection that was built even through my informational interview. So,
Cynthia, I got a question now.
Yes.
What question would you ask if the role was reversed? Right? You just talked about you're looking for a mentor and you interviewed the potential, you were looking for a mentor, so you interviewed the person who possibly could be your mentor. But what if the roles were reversed? Like, what would you be asking the person who
that was a mentor?
That could be the mentee, right? How do you interview the mentee to make sure that the mentee is a good match for you and you a good match for that person?
That's such a good question because everybody assumes if somebody asks you to be a mentor that it has to be a good fit for some reason.
Right.
Sorry, Cynthia, go ahead and answer that. I wanted to add a qualifier to that. I was like, yes.
I so wish I had like a little yard with like 1,000 questions. I just pull it out and be like, this is it.
This is the one.
To me as a mentor, one of the things I would want to know is, first, I think there will probably be a couple things, but the main one is what does success look like for you in a mentoring relationship? And the reason why I will ask that question first is because I need to understand if they know what they're asking for, right? And so success, looks very differently for every single person. And so I want to understand, can I provide what this person needs to help them be successful in this relationship? So that would be the question, with my 2 seconds that I had to think about this.
Like I'm catching the fire over here.
That I will do, because again, success for me going to the grocery store and buying this prom dress, right? Like maybe it's a chocolate prom dress. Maybe it's like a fabric prom dress, right? Like what does that look like for you? And so for me is if you can articulate what is that you need at the end, like what will make you happy or make you feel successful as you walk away from this relationship. That's what I want to know.
All right. I'm gonna push it a little bit further. Ready for this?
Yes.
Oh.
What question would you ask to make sure that the mentee is a good fit for you? Right? We often think about is that, am I a good mentor for this person? But is this mentee good for me? What question would you ask them?
You got Cinthia on the hot seat over here.
I know. And I'll be right back.
Marc's like, okay, I got a bunch of questions. I'm going to throw them at you. Ready, set, go.
I mean, for me, will be two things. One is I would want to know if their values match their values, because that's one of the ways that I look at life. And the other one would be, how are they going to be accountable in this relationship? That would be probably the questions that come up to mind right now.
One of the things I love, and this is a good time for like a talk check, right? I was just thinking about it. I was like, wow, if we were to take everything that we've just been, conversing about right now, but Cinthia had to go do a talk tomorrow. And she's like, oh, look at this, tomorrow morning, I got to do a talk. What would you regurgitate out of this? And what would you, how would you take all of this stuff and run it through the filter and present it, might be a good thing to think about. I literally thought about it right now because, a couple of things that we're talking about, and we're popping into different levels. Those questions you're asking, Marc, are really, really big questions. When you start to really think about the functional relationship, but then Cinthia even starts talking about literally the assessment level on both ends of like, what is it that I need? What am I looking for? Or on the other side, what can I offer? What am I an expert in? What am I in need of being mentored in? But if you start from the top, just rebranding this, I feel like this is a rebrand for mentoring. I loved your mentoria. Did I say it right? I'm like, wait, I have a Spanish last name, but I have to I've got to get the pronunciation right.
Said it right, but
I said it right, but I don't think I enunciated it right.
No. It just doesn't exist. But you said it right.
Oh, I can say it however I want. Oh, I love that. There's this new concept, right? However you pronounce it, however you want to say it.
No, you said it right, mentoria. You said it right. It's just like,
okay, I said it right.
It doesn't exist, like it's not in the dictionary.
It sounds so much better when Cinthia says it, though. That's what I'm saying, right, Marc?
Yeah.
I think it's a rebrand, though, and that's why I like the word too, because it's a rebrand of just the whole thing. So if you start at the really, really high level, it's a rebrand of what mentoring is, what it sounds like, how it's described, what it looks like, how it functions. I mean, we're actually talking about all these different levels, but at the top level, if I put on my marketing, lens, that you're trying to rebrand the thing.
Yeah.
I love the fact that there's two sides of it. I love the fact that you've already done a TED Talk to shift the mindset of mentees. And now this next stage of it is now shifting the mentorship of the mentors. I see you going into different organizations and teaching people how to be mentees and saying, hey, mentors, I didn't forget about you either. Now let's teach people how to be mentors. And now you have built a stronger mentor exchange. I was about to throw some other word out there, but I can't. You've developed a next level mentorship exchange. Wow, by tackling both sides.
And what if too? Yeah, fire. I feel like it's a mic drop.
Yeah, here's a mic drop.
Oh, look, and she has that, and I have one.
We're done. Woohoo!
Done. All right, done.
Yes.
I love that. Cynthia and Marc, I love it. And maybe one of the things too, I could see you talking about this. And so Cynthia, I'm going to ask you that question. Like, if you're going to talk tomorrow, how would you kind of present this now? Like, I'd love to just hear your 30 seconds of your synopsis of your new talk that you're giving tomorrow. And it's entitled the Mentorship Exchange or the Mentor Exchange, either one, whichever tense you want to use. But think about this. Everybody that you're talking to in the audience could be one or the other, or could be both at the same time. I could literally be mentored by somebody else in how to do spreadsheets better, because I suck at that. And I could and I could teach somebody how to use their creative brain a little bit more, because I practice that all the time. And so I could share a little bit of my expertise. And so, all right, Cynthia, tell us what's the synopsis of your new talk you're giving tomorrow?
Oh, this is hard. I was like, I'm all sweating.
She's like, oh my gosh, I'm sweating over here.
All right, well, let's give it a shot. If I was to do my another TEDx talk tomorrow, I will be like, ta-da! Let's discuss the mentor exchange. Well, what does that mean? I want you to start thinking about, what are you a mentor of, and what are you a mentee of? Ooh. And what does that actually look like? There you go.
I was trying to do fire. That's what this was. This was fire. I don't know what this is, but it's fire.
But those were the things that got stuck with me. The mentor exchange, of course, love it. And then going back to what you had said, Cathey, before, it's like, what are you the mentor of, and what are you the mentee of?
Yeah,
for me, it's just
I
like
love that.
deeper, because allows for like to peel the onion in so many different ways. Mm-hmm. And I think it's intriguing enough for people to be like, well, I don't know, you tell me. And I'm like, you know what? That's gonna cost you $1,000. Come on in here. Let's do it together.
I'll send you a bill.
now we just heard from the Latina-preneur.
Yeah, we did. We heard. Exactly. Oh my gosh, Cynthia, I love this. I'm glad I kind of had this. I had this idea in the middle of talking, because I already know that you've given a talk, and I was like, oh my gosh, if you were to have to give a talk tomorrow, what would it be? So I loved it was kind of a good way to see what you've kind of regurgitated out of this. And if you had to literally hang up here to, tomorrow you're going and talking to somebody, like, this is how you would explain it. It's really cool to hear. So could you tell me, though, just if we reflect back on this conversation, mm-hmm. Could you tell me what really shifted from how you started, the idea to where we are now? Like, how did that shift happen for you?
So it was like a 180-degree shift, to be quite frank, because I came in here thinking, let's just focus on the mentee. I truly forgot about the mentor. I mean, let's be honest. I was like, the mentee has been forgotten. The mentee doesn't get love. Let's give all the love to the mentee. Literally. And that's what my shift. I want to shift the love somewhere else. And so when I came in here, even Marc was like, hey, awesome. I love this. But how are we also empowering the mentors, right? Mm-hmm. Because it doesn't mean that what the mentors have been trained to do, or the tools that they've been given, are actually going to help them get to this exchange. So again, right, how do we start the conversation on both ends? Because not only do I have to continue to help shift the minds of the mentees, but absolutely, I was forgetting about the mentor. And I also need to start massaging that in too, and really helping with that, shifting of the minds, because they also have more power to start changing the system, to start changing the processes of what mentoring could look like in 5 to 10 years, and they can hire me to come and do that for them, right? So.
And on that note, I literally was just thinking, anybody watching that wants Cynthia's brain, who constantly thinks about this and goes really deep, Cynthia, how would somebody find you? Because they should find you.
Of course. Please find me everywhere. You can. You can find me on my website, Auténtica, in spelled in Spanish, autenticaconsulting.com. And well, I guess you can go to my LinkedIn, absolutely. Cinthia Manuel. I will say that that's probably my main two places where I am all the time on it. You can try Instagram and Twitter. I will start being more active then, but yeah, you can, you can.
But reach out if you want to talk to the real Cinthia.
Yes.
And for anybody watching, that's awesome. Reach out to Cinthia. Oh, please, if you, if you need her to school you on mentorship, if you want to talk about how to be a better mentee, if you want to talk about the Mentor Exchange, reach out. If you want to find Marc and I, we have a new website, which is really cool. It's abouttogodownshow.com. You can go to the site. You can see all of our episodes, both in video and podcast, if you just want to listen, but it's so much fun to watch. And reach out if you want to be on our show. And if you have an idea like Cinthia's that you need to bring to the world. But for today, Cinthia, thanks for being on, and thanks for dropping your idea onto the world. And now I know when you go out there, you can just, right before you get out to do a talk next time, just turn to yourself and go, it's about to go down.
Oh, yeah.